Hey, it's Mike Rowe, and it just occurred to me that ZipRecruiter has been sponsoring my podcast, The Way I Heard It, for the last 10 years. Consequently, I've agreed to sing their jingle at the end of this commercial in 4-part harmony, all by myself. Why would I do that? Because years ago, when the MicroWorks Foundation was expanding and I was desperate to hire a few uniquely qualified individuals, I posted a job for free on ZipRecruiter, and I found the people I was looking for in less than 24 hours. It's that simple. Ever since, I've been telling my audience that ZipRecruiter got me the most qualified, most interested people. And now I'm telling you. Post a job for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip and watch what happens. That's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. And now, here's their official jingle in 4-part harmony.
Build your team, build it sooner. Meet your match at ZipRecruiter. Try it free.
He's an attorney who grew up in an alcoholic family. He developed low self-esteem. He had issues himself, including his own alcoholism. He wound up representing a man in a landmark murder trial that changed his life. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. If you're on the Clubhouse drop-in audio chat app, be sure to look for me and follow me. My name's John, the letter J, Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y. You can also search for at LET Radio Show. That's John J. Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y, at LET Radio Show on the Clubhouse drop-in audio chat app. Contacts from Georgia. We have McCracken Poston on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. He's an attorney. He's also author of the book Zenith Man, Death, Love, and Redemption in a Georgia Courtroom. A website about him and the book is zenithmanbook.com. McCracken, thanks for being guest on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And I have a sneaking suspicion that you and I would not be doing this interview 20 or 30 years ago.
Probably not. We're probably busy doing other things.
Yeah, probably busy doing that. And the reason I'm saying that is he's going to let it part of the story. But you're a sober guy now, 20 years. I've been sober almost 35 years. So, and is it fair to say that police and defense attorneys, justifiably or unjustified, are not very close?
Well, it would be unusual.
Yeah.
But I think there's a grudging respect deep down, even though there's often a lot of hostility as well.
Yeah, I'll say this. I policed in Baltimore. What I learned how to become really good on stand was due to public defenders in district court in Baltimore. They made me the cop I was on stand. And I had total respect for defense attorneys unless they were drug attorneys. Then there was a different ball of wax. And there was nothing more corrupt than a drug attorney in Baltimore.
Oh, gosh. Well, as a prosecutor, I had some interesting cases where the I-75 pipeline was a cocaine run back in the 1980s. And so we had a good bit of multiple kilo stops on Interstate 75 that I prosecuted.
And by the way, the biggest difference between a prosecutor and a defense attorney is money. And one is not very profitable, is it?
Well, you're exactly right. But I have noticed over the years, and I guess perhaps with better civil service laws, that we now are seeing more and more career prosecutors. That wasn't the case when I was coming up. You did your time. You learned how to try a case at the state's expense, and then you hung out a shingle.
Yeah, and that was normal operating procedure. That's what a lot of Baltimore attorneys did. They cut their teeth in district courts, criminal courts, all that other stuff, and then he hung that shingle, went into business for himself, or they were a partner at a law firm.
You know, my friend Dick Harpootlian, who your listeners will only recognize, if not for his unusual name, as the lawyer for Alex Murdaugh in South Carolina. He started out as a prosecutor. He's got a new book out about a serial killer that he sent to the electric chair, and it's pretty chilling. You know, I actually was asked to review his book for him, and I was honored to get placement on the cover of back of his book. And so he, you know, it's another example of a really good prosecutor in his case, later moving on to become a very effective criminal defense lawyer.
Well, you said earlier in that statement that he was such and such, and I think you used the term unusual name. Isn't it like the pot calling the kettle black?
That is exactly what that is.
And by the way,
to him that if we have a joint book event, we're going to call it the Crack and Poot Show.
Oh, that would be so good. By the way, you have a great football name. If you think about it, you run a post on me, and I'm McCracking you. It's McCracken Poston is an unusual name.
Well, there's a story there.
I'm sure we got time. Go ahead and lay it on me.
Well, I'm McCracken King Poston Jr. My dad was born in rural Middle Tennessee, which is just above the Alabama line. In 1923, he was born at home. That's how everybody was born back then. The doctor came by later with the paperwork, but he took one look at the baby and said to my grandmother, he's not going to live through the night. And so they put him on a blanket in a wooden box on a lit wood stove to keep him warm. So my grandmother thought, well, if he's not going to live, I'll just give him all these family honorary names. So she named him McCracken, her maiden name, King, her mother-in-law's maiden name, and he lived 85 years.
Isn't that something?
And I'm his only son after 6 children.
It reminds me a bit of that Johnny Cash song about a boy named Sue. Did he fight a lot? Did he have to fight a lot growing up?
Oh yeah, I was. You know, actually, I took a different way. I tried to be the funniest guy in the room.
Well, there's a whole lot less lumps. I tried that too.
If you can't fight, you need to learn how to tell a joke.
Oh, well, I went between the two of them, and I was the strawberry blonde-haired kid with the freckles that had a fiery temper and would fight you and lose, but I'd fight. It didn't matter.
At least they knew what they were dealing with.
Yeah, yeah. And the funny thing is that some of the bullies, the moment you punched them, even if you lost a fight, they stopped picking on you. That's just the way things were.
Well, it's interesting that we're talking about childhood, because when you're the child of an alcoholic parent, even a loving alcoholic parent, which my father was, you end up having a lot of issues. And one of which was you really are trying to please everybody. You don't want to be the reason that somebody is off or somebody is, you know, having to drink. So, you know, it does affect you even in childhood. And I was always trying to make peace with everybody. And
the other thing, too, is, and this, you can agree with this or not, you don't want to be the responsible figure. You'd rather be the class clown, because being responsible meant, look, if I'm going to use this example, if Dad came home drunk, my responsibility. I didn't want to be the source of that. Yes,
I get it. It does give you incredible antenna. That's the best way I can put it. A real antenna for when things are off. I mean, you could kind of tell, you know, when he came home, always driving, of course, but you could tell, you know, the way the stance was.
Oh, yeah.
The way and that's almost a skill. It's almost an extrasensory perception that I actually think I still have remnants of today, and it helps me out a lot with clients.
I agree.
It helps me out to see that they're masking something, and they're not exactly being upfront with me about their addictions.
And we're talking with McCracken Poston. He's an attorney in Georgia. And he wrote the book about his world-famous trial, which we'll start talking about in a few moments, called Zenith Man, Death, Love, and Redemption in a Georgia Courtroom. His website is zenithmanbook.com. Zenithmanbook.com. Before we go to a break, is that Zenith Man, was that because the defendant was a TV repairman, or is that because he had a zenith in the apex of his career?
Well, you know what? Yeah, I guess you could read it both ways. That's interesting that you say that. Zenith, of course, was a TV brand.
Right.
And it was his franchise TV brand.
Aha.
It also was my father's favorite brand.
There we go.
My father was a loyal customer of my client.
This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We're going to take a short break. Don't go anywhere. I promise you. We'll be right back. Of all the radio stations in the United States, there are no other shows like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And on Facebook, there's only one official page. Do a search on Facebook for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And be sure to like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page.
Meet Keith, loving dad, board game champ, bus driving pro.
I drive 65,000 miles in my bus each year. If people knew what I know, lives could be saved. Like how there are some things I simply can't see. On my route the other day, a car tried to sneak past me and ends up right in my blind spot. I turned slowly, so accident avoided. But no car should be in the blind spot for a 40,000-pound bus. It's our roads. It's our safety.
Visit www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Return conversation with Kraken Poston. He is an attorney in Georgia. He's contacted from Georgia, and he's a sober guy now and has been for a better part of 2 decades. And he grew up in an alcoholic family, and he struggled with self-esteem issues and other things. And then a murder trial that changed everything for him personally, for the defendant as well. He wrote a book about it called Zenith Man, Death, Love, and Redemption in a Georgia Courtroom. And a website about the book is zenithmanbook.com. That's zenithmanbook.com. I got to ask you this, McCracken. We and my mother used to always say this: we all have our crosses to bear, and that doesn't matter where you come from. And what matters, in my opinion, is what you do with the end of it. But there is a murder trial that you were involved in. You're a defense attorney on that. There's a life before and a life after. Is that fair to say that?
That's a very good way to put it. I had been messing around in Georgia politics for a decade after I got out of law school. And I served 4 terms in the Georgia General Assembly as a member of the State House. And then in 1996, I'd done everything I thought I could do at the state capitol. I was a bit of a reformer, ethics reformer. I brought in Georgia's first lobbying registration and reporting of gifts act. And so I thought, man, I've helped clean up Georgia, and now let me go to Washington. And so I ran for the United States Congress and got the beat out of it.
That's the way of putting it. That's blunt, isn't it?
Yeah, that's as bad. There were no hanging chads, no contested elections in Georgia that year. I just got whooped.
So let me ask you this, because I often see these political things. I don't do politics, but see the losing politicians give the concession speech. Was yours like, well, that's kind of all there is, folks?
Well, I actually wrote about it in the book. I called to concede to my opponent, who was the incumbent. I will say this, that he was the recently party-switched incumbent.
Uh-huh.
And so that left me, Georgia used to be dominated by Southern Democrats. The switch was happening that cycle and the next. And so I was just completely overwashed by a red tide that came all the way up to the corner of Tennessee and Alabama and North Georgia and has remained red ever since. But I called my opponent, and I conceded this one, I said. But in my heart of hearts, I knew that was just not to be.
This was going to be the last one, right?
Yeah, yes, that was it.
So how did you get involved in this murder trial?
Well, I was really down. I resorted to my old friend of, drinking a lot. I've kind of followed the footsteps of my dad, even though I was frustrated about his drinking. I was hypocritical. And, I was kind of a loner. I'd gone through a divorce. I was trying to figure my life out. And then 11 months into that new uneasy situation, I hear that our local television man, who had oddly shuttered his business a decade before and started suing everybody and posting these kind of conspiracy-laden missives all over his shop, that suddenly I heard that there was a dead woman at his house. And then the next wave of information was, well, he says it's his wife. But I can tell you, I knew him as my childhood TV repairman. I also knew him as a business owner in the town. I had no idea he had a wife, and not many people did. And so when this woman was, and he called in her death, but conspiracy talk about him began, and speculation about where had she been these almost 30 years.
The standing joke I always got was, we found out you're married, but you keep your wife hidden in the basement because we never see her.
That's exactly what he was accused of. And so her family, what was left of her family, were siblings, and they were kind of picking up the mantle of something that their parents had started decades before, was this suspicion about the TV repairman. So, I was kind of thinking, I wasn't really happy with my own area. I lost my home county, and I used to win my home county by, 70% of the vote, and now it was flipped. I was in the 30% of the vote. And I thought, well, they're treating this guy, they're just railroading him, and I felt a little sorry for him. But then I saw him 3 days in a row on the street near my office, and I realized he's walking from a phone booth when he sees me walking. So this is by design. And so I just stopped on the third day and said, I'm sorry for your loss. And that just opened him up. But interestingly enough, he didn't want to do anything that was constructive toward me helping him. He just wanted to bellyache about a lot of things, none of them involving his wife. So he immediately, I realized this guy is going to be a problem.
What was the number one clue? By the way, in police work, that's called a clue. That this guy was going to be a problem.
Yes. And so, but he also seemed to be grieving, but he was obsessed over ancient civil litigation that had resulted in a counterclaim that led to one of his assets being seized by the county sheriff, who thought they were executing a judgment, a 1977 Chevrolet van. Well, he thought that's what we should be litigating and talking about. And I would get with him and get frustrated, and I would say, look, you really want to be talking about your wife and where she's been and what happened to her. And he would say, no, I don't. I loved her. But they did take my van. So that's what I was dealing with at first.
Was he already under arrest and released on bail for the murder charge?
No. 8 months went by.
But you knew there's an investigation going on, and he was like, it's going to blow over.
That's what I was thinking. But I thought, we met less and less, and we ultimately had an agreement that if anything happened, he would find me. If I heard anything happen, I would find him. And the summer of 1998, it happened. I heard he was arrested. I had not told my new wife yet because she was from town, and she was, a little bit afraid of him, like a lot of people were. He was a boogeyman to a lot of people. But I went to see him, and I immediately said, it sometimes takes a month to get a bond hearing down here. I just need you to know that. And he just blankly stared at me and said, "I've got animals." And I said, well, I tell you what, just sign your key out to me. I'll make sure everything's taken care of. He said, "No, just get me out." Talk about pressure.
No pressure, yeah. We'll take a break on that note. We're talking with McCrack from Poston. He's an attorney in Georgia. And he's talking about a murder trial that he wrote a book about called Zenith Man, Death, Love, and Redemption in the Georgia Courtroom. Turned out to be life-changing for him. And the website is zenithmanbook.com. That's zenithmanbook.com. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Wouldn't it be great to get free tips on how to improve your life? Join us on the Clubhouse social audio app with lots of like-minded people. Wednesdays at 12 noon, 3 p.m. Pacific for your confident life. It is always free. Get more details online at yourconfident.life. That's yourconfident.life. Online at yourconfident.life.
Meet Keith, loving dad, board game champ, bus driving pro.
I drive 65,000 miles in my bus each year. If people knew what I know, lives could be saved. Like how there are some things I simply can't see. On my route the other day, a car tried to sneak past me and ends up right in my blind spot. I turned slowly, so I accidentally avoided. But no car should be in the blind spot for a 40,000-pound bus. It's our roads. It's our safety.
Visit www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Return conversation with McCrack and Poston on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. He is an attorney in Georgia, a defense attorney, and he's talking about a world-class murder trial. Yeah, you've seen the TV shows about the Deep South and murder trials. This is what it sounds like. And he wrote a book about it, turned out to be life-changing for him. The book's called Zenith Man, Death, Love, and Redemption in a Georgia Courtroom. His website is zenithmanbook.com. That's zenithmanbook.com. So this guy, last week, before we went to break, they went up arresting him for I guess murder of his wife.
Yes.
And this guy was someone you knew, and you're trying your best to prepare him ahead of time. But and I know you're not allowed to say this, but did you have an inkling about guilt or innocence before he was arrested?
Well, as I said, I almost didn't care. I was kind of still ticked off at the world, and including my own hometown and county, who didn't even vote for their own in a very long district that stretched all the way back to across to South Carolina border. So I was just kind of, being a bit immature and a little butthurt about the whole situation. So I've got this guy who, has now put the big pressure on me by saying he wasn't going to sign his keys out to me, but he wanted to know he had animals in the house and he needed to be out. That actually did motivate me. I managed to, joking around with the judge and the prosecutor over the phone, I said, "It took him 30 years to kill this woman. Surely we'll get to trial before he marries and kills another." Uh-huh. And they all had a laugh, and then they agreed on a bond. And so I always, because it usually takes weeks, if not months, to get on a serious charge to get a bond down here, and of continual trying. And I always reminded him, when he thought I wasn't doing him a good job, I would say, "I got you out in 24 hours. And he would stare at me and say, 26 hours. And the thing about it is, he was right.
There's no winning with that kind of guy, is there?
There was no winning. You said it exactly the way that I intended.
And is it fair to say that with attorneys in particular, I know this from me, being a retired police, that life is black or white. There's not a whole lot gray. I want to win or lose. There's no in between.
Well, yeah, and particularly for me, John Jay, because I had just lost big time, and I I just really needed a win in my life.
Yeah.
And so I was extra motivated, but at the same time, I almost wanted to leave and just drop away. For one, all he wanted to talk about was a 1977 Chevrolet van that had been seized by the county in 1984. This was now 1998.
That's a little bit of time difference between and by the way, that 77 van ain't running anymore.
So we would end up yelling at each other, and it was just getting frustrated. I was getting frustrated. And at one point in my office, our voices are raising. I hear the word van, and I just rolled my eyes, reared my head back, and said, "Oh, Lord, the van." And he went silent. And I looked at him, and he was in a childlike prayer position with his eyes closed and his hands clasped. When he heard me say, "Lord," he thought I was praying. And he just got quiet. And I thought, I can work with this.
Yeah.
And so from there on out, whenever I really wanted him to listen, I did it in the form of a prayer. And an open prayer, "Oh, Lord, please let Alvin understand that this case has nothing to do with a van." And he, it worked. It at least shut him up. But I did some compromising, too. I promised him that I would go look at all his ancient civil litigation, all dismissed, all completely over. But I would go look at it, and I'm lucky I did, because I found an extra bit of litigation that he had not told me about. And it was an eviction from 1970 where the young couple was evicted from public housing. And this was just 4 years after their marriage. And so I'm looking at it, and there's a jury list, and I'm saying, a jury for an eviction? Only this guy could pull this off. And so I actually knew some of the names. So I called one of the jurors from the 1970 case, and I said, "You won't remember this from 27 years ago, but you were on a jury about an eviction." She said, "I'll never forget that."
I'll never forget
took
that
over
guy.
The courtroom. Yeah, and so it became aware. What happened was that his wife's parents, who were trying to flush her out because she had gone into seclusion fairly soon in the marriage. First, they sent church visitation committees because they were mad they quit coming to their church. And then her parents conducted a raid on the apartment because they thought it must be beer. Beer must be the reason she's not coming back to church. Well, this was a dry county, John J. Wiley. I don't know if you ever know what that means.
Yes, I do.
But a dry county in Georgia was a pious, we're not going to let alcohol cross our county line.
I live in South Florida, and I moved to Lake City, Florida for a radio job, and that's going in the Deep South. You go north of Deep South. Georgia is no exception. It's still the Deep South.
Yep. Well, we even though they had they were looking for beer, they didn't find any, but it really just made the young couple very angry at them. And so ultimately there was another incident that didn't involve her parents, but it involved an exterminator making a move on Virginia, the wife. And so in classic my client style, instead of confronting the man that offended your wife as she was bathing, he just decided, we're going to make ourselves scarce. And so they left every day. And sometimes they would stay at his parents' house. Sometimes they would stay in the TV shop. But her parents ultimately got them to be evicted. And they were sitting on the front row in the courtroom in that hearing in that trial in 1970. And so I'm hearing all this from the juror. And I start asking Alvin about it, and he's confirming it. And so the judge made Alvin's father go get his wife. And Virginia came to the courtroom, stood right in front of the bench, and said, Your Honor, I want to be with my husband. I don't want to be with my parents. And he sent she and her parents back into chambers just to make sure. They all came out. She went home with her husband, although they did get evicted, because Alvin was strange and litigious, and the housing authority was looking for any reason to get rid of that one. And so they ended up moving in with his parents and then staying in the TV shop some. And nobody saw her again for the rest of her life.
And how long a period of time are we talking about?
27 years.
No one saw her for 27 years.
No one in town saw her for 27 years.
Look, I think I'm pretty good at isolating, but that really is someone that's really good at the game.
She was good, but, it was coming from somewhere inside of her. We later learned.
Yeah.
So anyway, she was a real mystery. And so was Alvin, because he wasn't letting me in his house. I would end all of my, and I'm using air quotes here, prayers to ask, and Lord, please let Alvin let me in this house. And at the end of those prayers, Alvin would say, I'll think about it. And put me off.
By the way, you were still a drinking man at this point.
Oh, yeah.
That's important too. We'll talk about that in a few moments. We're talking about McCracken Poston. It's fair to say that a murder trial, which we've been talking about, changed his life. He wrote a book about it called Zenith Man, Death, Love, and Redemption in a Georgia Courtroom. And a website about the book is zenithmanbook.com. That's zenithmanbook.com. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to talk when we return about what in this trial caused him to change. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Someone asked, what's the catch? What's the cost? There is no cost for anything on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast website, letradio.com. letradio.com. Again, that's letradio.com.
Meet Keith, loving dad, board game champ, bus driving pro.
I drive 65,000 miles in my bus each year. If people knew what I know, lives could be saved. Like how there are some things I simply can't see. On my route the other day, a car tried to sneak past me and ends up right in my blind spot. I turned slowly, so accident avoided. But no car should be in the blind spot for a 40,000-pound bus. It's our roads. It's our safety.
Visit www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Return conversation with McCracken Poston. He's an attorney in Georgia, and he had a landmark murder trial, which we'll return to talking to in a few moments, that had a profound impact on him. By the way, you want to know what the outcome of the trial was? Stick around, you'll find out. He wrote a book called Zenith Man, Death, Love, and Redemption in a Georgia Courtroom, and a website for the book is zenithmanbook.com. That's zenithmanbook.com. I want to go to the trial very quickly, McCracken, and here's this woman not been seen for 27 years. They thought that meaning the authorities, thought that your client kept her hidden somewhere and then killed her. That turned out not to be the case, right?
That was not the case as things began to turn out, but Alvin wasn't really helping me get to that conclusion very much. He insisted on talking about the failed civil litigation that resulted in the taking of his van. I'm outside of his house taking photos to disprove that there are bars on the windows, as the tabloids, and I mean tabloids. The National Examiner had a headline, "Sicko Hull's wife captive 30 years, then kills her," and rank speculation throughout. And so I'm over there taking pictures of the outside of his house. Of course, he's not letting me in. And I bump into a van, and I say, "Oh, what's this car?" And he said, "That's the van they see."
Oh my God.
I found out the thing was only gone 3 weeks.
Oh my! And he's still talking about it.
He successfully got it undone because of I realized how smart the guy really was. He successfully proved that they did not have a valid judgment, and they returned his van. The litigant who was against him decided it's not worth it, and so The van was only gone 3 weeks, but he was obsessing on it still for 14 years, and he refused to touch it because he said, if I touch it, it'll start a new statute of limitations, and I want to keep my options open. So I'm thinking, this is so bizarre.
Did you ever think to yourself, what did I do to deserve this kind of client?
Always, constantly. And I'll tell you what kept me in. And I go into this in the book. Around the time that I began to represent Alvin, my sisters and I finally did an intervention on our father. And, I had some of the first sober conversations with my dad about his alcoholism. And he had a hard life growing up in the Depression in Middle Tennessee. His brother closest to him died of lockjaw. It was just a sad life that but all of the siblings went on to have alcohol issues.
Right.
My grandmother was a teetotaler, as that often is the case, and but we intervened, and in one of the first sober conversations, my dad expressed an opinion about Alvin, that he thought he was innocent, that he just thought different than a lot of people, and you always want to please your alcoholic parents.
Yeah.
So I did not have the heart to ever drop Alvin as a client because I didn't want to disappoint my dad. And so that's kind of kept me stuck with Alvin. And so we just went through, and the book is full of absolutely true ordeals. But my dad insisted on Thanksgiving Day of 1998 that I take a turkey plate to Alvin. Well, that's the last thing I wanted to do. Our trial was 4 weeks away in early January, 5 weeks away. But my parents are asking me to take a turkey plate to Alvin. So I thought, all right, I'll go. I knocked on the door thinking this is going to be a quick exchange, then I'm going to go home and relax. But Alvin was, as it turns out, very transactional. I was bringing him something very nice, and he knew I wanted something. And he invited me in his house.
No kidding.
And in his house, as soon as my eyes adjusted, it was not a pleasant place. But I noted a shrine that he was creating on one whole wall and part of another. That was all bits of pieces of cardboard and paper, all written on by the same hand. And it was the most mundane stuff, recipes, TV show casts. But then I saw one signed by his wife and a very unique hand. And I said, Alvin, who wrote all this? And he said, well, Virginia did, like I was an idiot. And I said, I got to have this. And I was a little too enthusiastic because it made him push back. And he said, well, you can't have it. That's all I've got left of her. And needless to say, I don't think I had ever touched the man. I grabbed both of his hands and I said, let us pray. And I went into the most fervent, and I'm using air quotes again, prayer, where I am explaining to him how this can save you. And Lord, please let Alvin understand this can save him. And ultimately, he relented after I promised him $200 to copy them. And but he wouldn't let me keep the originals. So we had this copying session where I was stealing originals so that I would have something to defend him with at trial in case he
And
changed
speaking of
his mind
defense,
and didn't show up.
what was the final outcome of the trial?
Well, gosh, I learned a whole lot about Alvin, but what I did not learn was, until the very end, was he needed to tell his story. I was not planning on putting him up because I knew that the minute he started talking about a Chevy van, he was going to lose that jury. But he had a vision right before the end of the trial where Jesus ordered him to take the stand. And who am I to get in the way of that kind of
It's kind of tough to win that argument.
Oh, well, first place, it was Alvin's call to make whether he testified or not.
Right.
And so, I realized, no pun intended, the writing was on the wall that Alvin was going to testify. And so what was amazing was I just quit worrying about how he was going to be perceived. And he had, by the way, he brought her writings to court in these ancient suitcases. And your readers, your listeners may remember this from Forensic Files, Season 5, Episode 9, Calligraphy. The jurors were seeing the hordes of cockroaches coming out of those suitcases, so much that we infested the first courtroom.
Oh, there you go. Was he found not guilty?
But, well, let me get you.
We're running almost out of time.
The judge made us move to an old courtroom, which was the last place Virginia Ridley had ever been seen alive, and the jury came back and acquitted Alvin.
There we go. And is it fair to say, before we go into you writing a book about this was a life-changing event for you?
Well, my dad showed up at the trial, and I was horrified because my dad never showed up at anything because usually he was drinking. And Alvin turned around and said, "Your daddy's here," and I was horrified because I had too much on my plate, and now I have to deal with this. But my father was sober, and he was sober for the most of the last 10 years of his life after then. So that gave me hope and the resolve to clean up my own act. And my father passed away 10 years later, but I think he was actually proud of me. He told me he was.
That's good.
I was, of course, elated that I did something that he could clearly see me do. And then I remained Alvin's friend for the rest of his life.
And by the way, he wrote a book about it. You can get more details about the trial. Zenith Man, Death, Love, and Redemption in a Georgia Courtroom. And the website is zenithmanbook.com. That's zenithmanbook.com. McCracken, I got to thank you for telling your story on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and for the journey that you took us on. It was very much appreciated.
Well, one thing I hope your listeners will listen. It turns out, and we only found out at the end of his life, that Alvin had autism. And that explained everything. It explained all of our conflict. So I hope that police and lawyers and judges all get something from this book, that we need to investigate more closely what could be making someone tick.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.